ADHD and you've ever gotten to the end of the day where you didn't stop moving and yet somehow you feel like you never got anything done, then this video is for you. So let's dig into and talk about the real reason that ADHD brains struggle with productivity and why it is not just about being lazy. First and foremost, we have this thing called the guilt loop. Now, the guilt loop starts up because we are conditioned, ADHD or not, to constantly feel like we are behind because the people who are highlighted to us through social media, through magazines, podcasts, etc., first and foremost are showing off their highlight reels, and secondly, they are the people who have actually gotten to somewhere usually fairly substantial in their life. And for every one of them, there's thousands of not thems. We have reached a point in our society where we have become obsessed with hustle and with visible output. I spoke with a guy once who tried to convince me that if you haven't already accomplished your goals for the year by the middle of the year, you're failing for the year. And then we have the fact that ADHD brains are just processing stimuli at usually a much higher rate than most other brains. A lot of ADHDers deal with some combination of anxiety and depression on top of it because our brains just kind of never stop going. And when they do that, it's really easy for us to fall into the spiral of feeling like we should have accomplished more. Our brain was going 600 miles an hour all day. Why didn't we accomplish 600 miles an hour's worth of production, despite the fact that we're still in the same body as the neurotypicals? So the lazy myth is this idea that individuals with ADHD are not motivated or not willing to put in the effort. And that's just usually not the case. Usually they're putting in a lot of effort, and it's more of a regulation issue. Because of some of the neural differences in the ADHD brain versus the neurotypical brain, we have an executive function like suite in our brain that is not necessarily operating at the same level as a lot of neurotypicals. That leads to problem with prioritizing things. That leads to problem with regulating where energy is going, and getting tasks even started sometimes feels like climbing a mountain. The reality is that ADHDers usually aren't lazy, they are exhausted from overcompensating in silence. So what do we do here to work with the ADHD internal operating system instead of against it? Well, one of the things that we have to learn to shift to do, and if I'm being totally honest, this is something I'm definitely still learning as well, but we have to learn to start defining success a little bit differently, focusing on progress over perfection. I actually had a whole conversation with one of my coaches recently about this because I was getting frustrated that I wasn't completing any of these tasks. And I have this issue where I feel like if I didn't complete a task, I didn't actually make progress on it. And so we've been reframing my goals when it comes to these tasks to how much actual how many words did I either get edited or written in a month instead of did I complete a book in a month? So a few things to try. First and foremost, start tracking your wins. Especially if this is something you're struggling with, definitely start tracking your wins. Secondly, use done lists instead of to-do lists. To-do lists can be helpful, but they also can just spark that shame spiral to go even further. So instead, you could build your to-do list if you wanted to, but what I want you to do is start building a done list. Everything you start getting knocked off in the day, write that one down. And lastly, be willing to acknowledge effort, not just outcomes. Because when we put the effort in, we start to create momentum. We start to create traction towards the goals we're working for. Sometimes it's not at the speed we wanted it to be, and our brain is really good about going off and explaining all the reasons that's a problem. But we have to start being willing to say, you know what, I did make effort towards this. And if you need to, start trimming the people from your life who are insisting that effort is not the thing to be rewarded. This isn't a participation trophy. That's not what I'm trying to say you need to do for yourself here. What I'm trying to say you need to do for yourself is to actually look at the amount of effort you are putting in and be willing to say, that was actually a really good effort. Maybe it didn't have the outcome I wanted, but it was a good effort, and tomorrow I can do the same thing. Last but not least, I want to encourage you to start celebrating consistency with yourself, not just completion. Now, I know that consistency is another one of those words that can become really challenging for ADHDers. So what I don't want is for you to celebrate consistency and then beat yourself up if you're not consistent. I want you to remember that sometimes we all fall off the wagon, and it's just a matter of getting back on as soon as you remember that. And if we can start to shift this, it makes a big difference. When I was in college, I went and lost a ton of weight, and one of the biggest things that was helpful for me in making that happen was remembering that when I fell off the bandwagon and I ate a cookie or a piece of cake, it didn't need to spiral into the whole day being a, well, this day is lost. It was, okay, I had the cookie, I had the piece of cake, that's fine. I'm gonna get back on track starting now, starting right here, as opposed to waiting for tomorrow, which never ended up showing up, or by the time it did, I wasn't feeling well enough to actually focus on it. Look, the biggest thing to remember is that you are not your to-do list. You are not your goals. You are a unique individual who brings different skills and talents to the table. And ADHD brains just need a little bit of a different rule book than the one that most of society, most of those neurotypicals are out there operating under. If you're up for it, drop it in the comments and let us know one thing you were able to knock out this week, no matter how small it was, because we would like to celebrate you being enough.